Hello, everybody. It's Carla Webb, Christian life coach. And if you follow me at all, you know that this is October, so it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And each day I've tried to share information about domestic violence awareness, and whether it's just posting something or doing a video. And today I'm doing a video on why don't you just leave, because that's the biggest question that gets asked to people who are survivors of domestic violence, is or who are victims of it, is, well, why don't they just leave? Because it seems like that would just be the solution to the problem, and that would be the easy answer. Well, if it's so bad, just leave, just walk out the door. And obviously, if it was that easy, then that is what you would do. You would just leave. But on average, it takes a victim 8 times, leaving 8 times for them to finally leave for good. So obviously, leaving is not as easy as it sounds if it takes 8 times to finally get out of the power and control that your abuser has over you. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, is the extent of power and control that has overtaken you over years, period of years. This isn't something that just happens on the first day. Abuse doesn't show up on the first date. It likes to court you, as I like to say. So I thought I would share a story about the first time that I really seriously tried to leave. And we were about 5 years into our marriage, and we had a 1-year-old son. And we had gotten into this big argument, not this big fight, yelling, screaming match. And I have this 1-year-old child, and I'm looking at this kid, and I'm looking at my son thinking, I'm not raising my child in this environment. I'm not raising him in a family that is screaming and hollering at each other all the time. So I started thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Because I know it's not as simple as just walking out the door. And over the years, I was told several times, you can leave if you want to, but you're not taking the kids. And so that was the big concern, is if I leave, will I be able to take my children with me? And at this time, my child with me. So whenever my husband got into the shower, I saw that as my opportunity to try to find out some information. So I called a friend of mine who was a sheriff's deputy, and I said, I want to leave, but I need to know that if I leave, do I get to take my son with me? And if I take him with me, do I get to keep him? What is that? And he said, well, typically, he's like, if you're leaving and if you're really doing this, if you take him, then your child should be with you, should be able to stay with you until you go to court or whatever. And so I said, okay. And while he was still in the shower, I went and I grabbed a diaper bag, and I grabbed as many things as I could. And I got my son, and I got him in his car seat, and I got in the car, and I start backing out of the carport. And as I'm backing out of the carport and out of the driveway, he comes out the door, and he catches me. And he jumps on the hood of my car. So here I am in the car. I have my 1-year-old son in the back seat in his car seat, and I have my husband on the hood of my car. What am I going to do? So we lived in a small town, and I knew a sheriff's deputy that lived in the town. So I drove across town, not a block away, not on the same side of town. Even though it's small, it was still on the other side of town. And I drove across town with him on the hood of my car. And when I got to the sheriff's deputy's house, I honked on the horn. Fortunately, he was home, and he came out, and my husband got off the hood of the car. And in the process of that, the sheriff's deputy kind of chalked it up as, oh, well, you guys are just having a tiff or whatever. He didn't see it as serious as what I saw it as. I'm like, this guy just rode across town on the hood of my car. And I'm sitting there, holding, I got my son in the car, and he said, do you think that if you gave him your son that he would hurt him? So the question was, if you give him your son, do you think that he will hurt him, that your child will be in harm? And I said no, because in that moment, I wasn't thinking that he was going to hurt my son. That was the honest answer to the question. And he said, well, then why don't you give him your son? And then because he was saying, she's not leaving with him. She's not taking him. She's not leaving with him. And so he said, why don't you give him your son and then you just go somewhere and cool off? And that moment changed the next 10 years of my life. Because in that moment, what registered in my brain is, I'm never going to be able to get away from him. And if I do, I'm not going to be able to take my child with me. He's going to end up with my son, and I'm not going to have him. Because that's what that said to me. And for the next 10 years, that changed everything. Because he would always say, you're never going to get away from me. And if you do, you're not taking my kid. You're not taking our son. You're not leaving with him. And that moment proved him right. And it would take me another 10 years to finally leave. And so when you ask, you sit back and you ask the question, why don't they just leave? Because it's not as simple. You're not dealing with a situation that's as simple as if two people respect each other that may disagree and may not like it, but they will respect your decision, then yeah, you just walk out the door and you leave. But if you know that it's not going to be that simple, you're going to do everything you can to try to make it work so that you can avoid that scenario, that exact scenario that went down and just happened. So if you are someone that has not experienced domestic violence, and you kind of sit back in judgment and are like, why don't they just leave? I mean, problem solved. It's not that simple. And there's a lot of other factors, and I will talk about those on another day. But for me, that was the deciding factor, and that changed my life for 10 years. And so I ask you, if you are someone that is relating to these stories, and you are saying, oh my gosh, that's me. I mean, maybe not the exact scenario, but if you are someone that is having an aha moment and realizing that what you're experiencing is domestic violence and that it is abuse, whether they're hitting you or not, there's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological, financial, spiritual, sexual. There's all different types of abuse that falls under domestic violence. And so if this is if you're saying, oh my gosh, that's me, you can reach out to me. I will get you in contact with the resources that are available to you. I will listen to you, and I will believe you, because that's a major factor and a major issue with people, is they're afraid that if they tell someone, they won't believe them. So I'm telling you that if this is happening to you, you can contact me. I will listen, and I will believe you. And I will get you in connection with the resources that you need to get you safe. That I promise you. So if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Share this with them. Guide them to my website, carlawebb.org. Guide them to my Facebook page. Just get them in contact with me, and then I will get them in contact with who they need to be in contact with. Okay? Know that God loves you. Know that I love you. And if you can be anything in this world, be kind. Love you.